everyone, and welcome to Emotional Grit, the podcast where you can learn about the power of perspective and the science that fuels us. I'm your host, Jennifer Fernjack, and on today's episode, we have Cathy Fernjack, the founder of Mother's Touch Ministry. And as you can probably tell by her last name, she's my mom as well. So I'm very grateful to have her here today. As part of Mother's Touch Ministry since the 1980s, she literally has traveled around the world volunteering to help people during times of need, including people from Romania, Ukraine, Kenya, the Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, Mexico, Canada, the US, and others. So I'm very, very grateful to have her here today. And as part of her message, she'll be sharing with us how, regardless of who you are or where you're from, there are ways to connect with people. And sometimes you don't have to even use words. So thank you for being here, and please feel free to like and subscribe to my podcast channel on YouTube, which is just called Emotional Grit, for additional episodes. So Mom, thank you for being here today. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here, Jen. I'm very proud of you and what you're doing. So it's nice to be a
Wow.
part of it.
Thank you. I'm very proud of you as well. So the first thing that I want to talk about today is what I wrote about in my book in terms of even just smiling at someone. Literally, there's research that's shown that just simply smiling at someone can actually influence the feel-good chemicals of the brain, such as dopamine, serotonin, or endorphins. So of course, the person who you smile at can feel good for that gesture, but you can feel good for doing it as well. I know that over the years, when I've worked in office settings with people who are in sales, there have been programs that were called Smile and Dial. And literally, the people who were in sales were encouraged to pick up the phone and call prospective clients and smile when doing so, because by doing that, it could actually influence how they, like the actual tone of their voice. And then the people who got the phone calls felt good for getting them as well. So it's those feel-good chemicals of the brain. So as far as how this relates to you, I think back to when I was little. And I know there were a couple times at grocery stores that come to mind where you would say to me and my brother Scott things like, if someone doesn't have a smile, feel free to give them one of yours. And so could you please share one of those times, whether it was in Minnesota or when we lived in Alaska, and when something like that happened?
Sure. I had gone to a grocery store after work one day and walked in, and there was a gentleman kind of restocking the produce. And I said, "Hi, how are you today?" and gave him a big smile. And he stopped and he looked at me and he said, "You are the first smile I've had all day." And he said, "Everyone else who has come in here has been very crabby." So then I said, "Well, you're proving a point of something that I always say to my kids, that if you see someone without a smile, give them one of yours." And it just was really transforming to me the power of a smile.
Oh, absolutely. Although at the time I had no clue there was science behind it, as far as how it would benefit people. So it's really interesting how that works. Again, regardless of who you are or where you're from. Also, I think it's interesting that during the first couple of years of the pandemic, when it was more prevalent as far as wearing a mask, even in grocery stores or just different places, how it was possible to tell when someone was smiling just by looking at their eyes.
Yeah.
So that's pretty amazing, as well. But also, would you mind sharing with the listeners just some examples of how, when you were volunteering with homeless people in Minneapolis, just how smiling added value to those conversations, and then just other things you did as well to help those people feel that like they weren't invisible?
Sure. And I think feeling invisible is something that the different people I talked to who are homeless had shared. It was just kind of a common thing. And I was part of a group that every Friday night we fed homeless people down in front of Harbor Light. And as we were getting our tables set up and ready, the people were lining up. And I had really tried hard to make eye contact with people, give them a smile, ask what their name is, just also being respectful that there were those who didn't want to share what their names were. But for the most part, people were very receptive. And as I would look over to my left at the people in the line, they were just standing there looking almost excited, like she's going to smile at me and just make eye contact, acknowledge their presence and that they were seen. And it just seems like that just is so important, and it helps to give people dignity.
Absolutely. Well, if I remember correctly, didn't you also ask people certain things they would share with you, perhaps the last time you saw them? So it could be, for example, hey, how's your job search going? Or hey,
Mhm.
how's your daughter? Or something to that effect, just so that they show that you remembered who they are.
Well, sure. Some of them were working towards their GED, so I would ask about the progress of that because that's quite an accomplishment. Or they
Absolutely.
had applied for an apartment and wanted to know where the process was going, and how soon before they could get in. And many of them would ask me for Bibles, and they wanted a certain one. So I would be like a woman on a mission during the week, going to places trying to find the one that they liked. And if I couldn't find it, like one week, the next week when I was outside with them, I would let them know that I was looking, that I hadn't forgotten, and that I was going to find them one. And I think that was important to honor my word with them, that I didn't go, oh, sure, I'll do it. But it was important to follow through. So I developed a
Definitely.
lot of good relationships with people outside there, and because they knew that our group cared.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, in addition to smiling, I know that the power of touch can actually influence the feel good chemicals of the brain as well. And of course, by this, I mean appropriate touch. I'm not trying to say that inappropriate touch is should be considered, but I do want to quote from my book how I had written about touch, just to share with the listeners today, as far as how it can affect people physically, whether it's newborns in a NICU unit at the hospital, or even adults for that matter too. So the paragraph reads in part: human touch can be thought of as a nice gesture, but did you know that there could also be health benefits? By decreasing the level of the stress hormone cortisol, hugs have the ability to trigger the release of oxytocin and lower stress, high blood pressure, and risk factors for heart disease. So obviously, hugs carry a lot of weight. This type of affection has also been shown to reduce pain and promote the growth of premature babies. Neonatal intensive care units can be bright, loud, and stressful for babies, so human touch can help calm them and even lower heart rates. And then, of course, I went on to write how weighted blankets can help people. I know not everybody likes them, but as far as the benefits, they could be that people could feel just kind of embraced or just kind of loved by the weight of the blanket. And they're actually known to actually increase the feel good oxytocin chemical in the brain. And then I also note in here how even after an athletic event, like say a certain baseball team wins a game, and they do what's called a dog pile. It's all the players just pile on top of each other on the field. It's that power of touch again, and kind of having that sense of connectedness. So, as far as this relates to children, would you mind sharing with everybody what happened with that baby Chrissy in the hospital who you would visit? A total stranger, as far as how you learned about her condition and what happened?
Sure. There was a group of us from our church who went to a nursing home in Anchorage, and we were going to sing Christmas carols and just have like a Christmas message. So we were going around and going to the different rooms and pushing wheelchairs and assisting people to come to the room where we were going to hold the service. And as I was walking down one of the halls, I heard a baby crying, which seemed very strange in a nursing home. So I followed the cry and went into a room, and there was a baby laying in this crib. And so then I went out and asked the nurses if it was okay for me to pick her up and bring her out there. Well, it turned out that when she was probably like a year, maybe 15 months old. When she was 9 months old, she was in a walker, and she was from a village quite a ways away from Anchorage. She got a hold of a cord that was for a crock pot of hot chili, pulled it down on herself, and it had very, very bad burns all over her body. And so she'd been airlifted into Anchorage, because her parents were poor and lived far away, she had to stay in this nursing home. And so I would go, she was very rigid because her muscles had contracted from the burns and the scars. So I would go every week, and I would see her and hold her and just kind of stroke her arms and her legs and just love on her. And I would hold her head in my hand and look down and talk to her. And after just a few weeks, I noticed that she was like trying to talk to me. I mean, just move her mouth. But when I would go there each week, when I would go into the room, I'd go, "Hey, sweetie, it's me, I'm here." And she would start to tremble because she knew it was my voice. And then because it was like her way of showing excitement. And even the nursing staff said that they saw a difference in her just because somebody would come and hold her every week and just spend time with her. And then another story was when I was in Reynosa, Mexico. I was at a children's home, and there were two little sisters and a brother who had just been recently brought to the children's home. And I picked up the one little girl and held her on my lap, and she kept pressing into my chest like she couldn't get close enough. So it just goes to show that the skin hunger that people can have, especially kids.
Oh yeah, the power of touch.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Again, regardless of who you are or where you're from, or whether you're a little one or an adult,
Yeah.
it just can
Mm-hmm.
affect people physically. So it's pretty amazing. Now, would you mind providing some context for people as far as the little kids who were at that orphanage in Mexico, as far as why they were there, or were they adoptable or not adoptable, or what the status was?
Sure. The kids at this particular children's home were not adoptable. They all had a living family member somewhere who wasn't able to, or couldn't, or wouldn't take care of them, just for whatever reason. So, if children were going to be adopted, they had to go further into Mexico. There was also the concern with the Mexican government of children being brought across the border illegally. So that's why they had to go like farther in and go through the proper channels. But these kids, like I said, were there. A lot of them I watched grow up. Some of these kids whose diapers I used to change now have kids of their own. So it's been fun over the years to watch them grow.
Well, and weren't you saying before that when you watched movies at the orphanage, that oftentimes the kids had to be touching you? So it could be one kid on each leg, maybe one behind you putting his chin on your head or whatever. It's just
Oh yeah.
wanting that sense of touch.
Oh yeah, I remember one day we watched Toy Story in Spanish 4 different times. So, but it was fun just to be with the kids. But I would have a kid on each each knee, and one on each side, and at my feet there'd be, and then somebody would be standing behind me with their head on my head. But every 15 minutes we'd have to get up so I could shake and get the blood circulating again, and then I'd sit down and they'd all pile back on. And but it was just important for them. It was a mother's touch. That's what they
Oh
needed.
yeah. I think it's also interesting with those kids how you didn't just build rapport, you also built trust. And part of that's because you came back pretty much every year, and
Mhm.
sometimes more than once in a given year. And so the kids knew when you would say, I'll see you again next summer, or I'll see you again next fall, that you literally were going to come back. So they learned to trust you. And I remember you telling me years ago that there was one a little orphan in particular who was supposed to be going to sleep, but you could tell that he was fighting going to sleep. He didn't even want to close his eyes, and basically he kept saying, "Cathy, you know, go," in Spanish, and he was afraid that if he fell asleep when he woke up in the morning, you were going to be gone. And so your way of trying to address that was, you know what? Yes, I am leaving, but it's one day closer to the next time I'll be here. And
Right.
then you would come back,
Right.
you know?
And not everybody can come back. I was very fortunate to be able to go back sometimes up to 3 times a year with the
Hmm.
kids, so that when I would say to them, I'm coming back, I always come back. And they would nod their heads because they knew that I would. And I just thought it was important to build that rapport with the kids and that trust level. And I enjoyed it. I love the kids like they were my own. And so I always enjoyed going down and being with them. And the fun thing is all the kids were Fernjacks. So that just kind of became the big joke of we'd have Erica Fernjack and Carlos Fernjack, and I would send them birthday cards and Christmas cards to whatever Fernjack. And so it was like the
But you
big
mean
Fernjack
that in a
family.
kidding way, right? Like they're not really
Yes,
friend
yes,
jacks.
yes, 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 yes,
So
yes,
yes, it
yes,
was that they considered themselves to be family, even though they weren't
yes,
by blood, it was they were
right,
family by choice,
yes,
which is a beautiful thing, if you think
yes.
about it. I also think it's great that when you go on your mission trips, whether it was in Mexico or even like when you were in Romania and helping people from Ukraine who came over who are now refugees during the war, how adults as well. Sometimes they just wanted a hug. Sometimes
Yeah.
they just wanted someone to hold their hand or just kind of just like put your hand on their shoulder or something. Again, just a way to connect. Do you have any stories that come to mind from being in Romania last year and whether it was working with people who are from Romania or perhaps people from Ukraine who were there as refugees?
Well, our particular group went to a Roma area of our city, the city we were in, and we did vacation Bible school every afternoon. And one day when we came out, there was a woman across the street who just came towards me with open arms. And I think she was just so grateful that we came and were just working and blessing the kids. I mean, doing things with
Yeah.
them. So I remember standing in the middle of the road, this Romanian woman and I were hugging, and it just meant as much to me as to her.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I just think that's important.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Also, I want to call it the fact that having a healthy conversation with someone, so one that's not adversarial, one that's not one-sided, but one that's actually healthy, can also influence those feel-good chemicals of the brain. Whether it's dopamine or serotonin or that kind of thing. So as part of any kind of a healthy conversation, it's not just talking to someone; it's also being able to listen.
Yes.
So, would you mind telling people what happened when you were in Haiti? I want to say this was probably maybe 10 years ago, something to that effect. I know that I was working while you were on your mission trip, and your brother Dave sent me a text message just saying, "Have you heard from your mom?" And I just said, "No, she's on a mission trip," and I had meetings that afternoon, and so I get back to my phone, and the next text message from him just read, "Check the news." And so I sure enough, I pulled up some news websites on my computer, and it showed that an earthquake had hit Haiti while you were there. And so I'm just wondering, in terms of trying to resonate with people, whether it was the caregivers who were there, just like you, it could be people who were there volunteering with Doctors Without Borders or different organizations, how you were able to listen to people and how that helped, or what happened when you went back weeks later to volunteer with a medical clinic in that regard as well. So any meaningful conversations or examples where you just simply wanted to listen and let the person just kind of uh, unleash just kind of what they were going through?
Sure. 2 days later, we were evacuated out of Haiti. And on the plane, I sat next to a dentist who had been assisting doctors down there, and they were actually doing amputations without anesthesia. And he just, I mean, there was just no medical supplies, and it was you just had to do what you had to do. And he just needed somebody to listen and to validate the importance of what he had done. And then when we went back 2 months later or 4 months later, just we held clinics. There was me and another nurse held clinics at 3 different days. And the people that were coming in, the adults pretty much all had post-traumatic PTSD. And so just trying to just reach up, and even though I had to use interpreters, just to have a kind word for them, reach out, just hold their hand or touch their shoulder or something, just to show that, their pain was my pain, and,
Hmm.
that my heart was with them. And I was
Hmm.
sorry for what they had to go through. Also, with the little kids, that we stayed at an orphanage, and just to spend time just holding the kids and loving on them, because they've been traumatic for them as well.
Definitely. Well, and I'm so glad that you called out that it was kids and caregivers, because caregivers can obviously get compassion fatigue or have different things that can happen to them as far as what they've seen and what they've experienced firsthand or what they heard about. Or I know in your case, you talked about how you would have loved to have stayed longer after the earthquake happened, but you had to evacuate when you had the opportunity to evacuate.
Yeah.
And part of that, you weren't feeling well as well. But if I remember correctly, you were actually evacuated from the U.S. Embassy, correct?
Well, yes, yes. We got on a bus and went to a different part of the embassy area, and then we were evacuated out about midnight that night. Well, it was like the earthquake was on Tuesday, and we left on Thursday night.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, we basically were told, you need to leave now. Make sure you have your passport, and you can't take anything with you. So
Wow.
clothes on our back, and we left. But
Yeah, and
it
didn't
was
you
really
fly back to the States in a cargo plane and you had no idea where you were even landing? You just knew that you were
right,
going to come back to the
right,
States?
right,
Wow.
right.
So, given all these years worth of mission trips, if you had to just kind of ballpark guess, 'cause this is since at least the mid 80s, how many trips would you just kind of guess you've been on?
Over 60.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. And I know that in the past you've shared how when you go on these trips, obviously the intent is to help others, but you find when you come home that yes, they could benefit, but you did as well.
Oh,
If anything,
yeah.
it's to count your own blessings
Mhm.
and just for the way you're able to touch others and try to meet their needs, or at least just be there for them, whether it was with a smile or perhaps a hug, or even just being able to listen to what they had to say, could have a huge impact on you as well.
Well, I remember when we were in Kenya, we were pretty much out in the middle of nowhere. There was no electricity, no running water, and a squatty potty. So it
Nice.
was roughing it. But there was 8 little girls who had been rescued pretty much. But every morning I would wake up and see 8 sets of eyes staring at me, waiting, to wake up, and just to be out there and read to them and spend time with them. And it's like when you're having the privilege of being with some really special people, the hardships aren't hardships. You're just so grateful to be there.
Oh,
And
yeah.
what I felt with the little girls. And the second night we were there, that my coworker or other lady that was with me was teaching the little girls a song and kind of a dance routine. And all of a sudden, this little 3-year-old girl kind of left the line, came over, jumped in my lap, snuggled in, and went to sleep. And she just met me 2 days before, but
Oh,
felt safe doing that. And those are the things that money can't buy,
oh,
where you're doing that.
definitely.
And I just,
Well,
yeah.
and for your first mission trip in Mexico, wasn't it to that Salvation Army orphanage where you didn't speak any Spanish, or maybe a little bit of Spanish, like please or thank you, that kind of thing, but you were just able to actually connect with the orphanage, the orphans who lived there. So if I remember correctly, it was simply something like maybe they wanted you to watch them as they were on a swing set, and hey, look how high I could go. And even though you didn't speak the same language, you could still show interest in what interested them. So if they wanted to show you, hey, I made a basket, watch me, or that kind of a thing, just paying attention sounds like it was a good way to show respect and interest and love as well.
Well, and that's what I found was so amazing on that trip was the fact that my Spanish was, hola and adios. That was pretty much it, or gracias. And none of these kids spoke English. But we managed to communicate because love doesn't always need words. And so, like you said, it was watching them on a swing and see how they loved you need a cheer when they were going high, and coloring something. And most of them maybe had one crayon, but I would make a big deal out of the picture that they had colored. And, but still just showing them love. I mean, just being a mother to the kids. And there was one little girl that always wore this very plain silver necklace, chain around her neck. And the last day that I was there, she and I were sitting on her bed, and she reached up, took the necklace off her neck and put it around mine. And that I almost started to
Oh,
cry because I don't know where that came from, but she was still giving me something that was a treasure possession of hers. And that really, really meant a lot. Well,
oh,
then when the other
definitely.
kids saw that she had done that, then they all wanted to give me something. So they would all give me some little, beanie, little tiny toy or some little thing. And I went back to Minnesota with a suitcase full of things. But, you just never want to rob somebody of the joy of giving, even though they don't have much themselves.
Yes, definitely. Well, and also I know that if you think about an orphanage setting, people are usually addressed in groups. Like it's everybody has dinner at the same time and you all eat the same thing, or you all
Mhm,
go outside and play ball, or it's kind of a group effort for a good chunk of the activities and stuff.
mhm.
Whereas you tried to address people individually. So it was sending people birthday cards where they were the only person that day, unless somebody else had a birthday,
Uh-huh.
got a card with $1 in it. Or
Right.
it could have been a matter of when you would go to the orphanage, making cookies and having them help you make the cookies, and they got to make their own, and or maybe it was having a pizza day, and they each got to pick their favorite kind of pop. Do you want
Mhm.
Coke or root beer or whatever? But again, that autonomy that comes with that made them feel special too. So,
Well, and I think, many times as families, I know we had traditions that we had, when you and your brother were growing up. And so the traditions with the kids at the Josiah and Bethany Children's Home in Reynosa, they knew that when I came, we always baked cookies and we always made cupcakes. So I would buy the packages of chocolate chip cookie mix before I crossed the border. But and then I always get 2 chocolate cake mixes and chocolate frostings, a strawberry cake mix and frosting, and a funfetti cake mix. So the days that we made cookies, whatever shape they were, they got baked. I didn't redo them after, which was kind of hard for my type A personality, but I'm like, this is special for them. And there was one time, one of the little girls had her back to me, and I said, Chayla, what are you doing? She goes, Cathy, look. I'm like, Jayla, what are you doing? Kathy, look. And all of a sudden she turned around, and she and a couple of the other kids had taken chocolate chip cookie dough and spelled out my name on the cookie sheet. So I baked it. And then Saul made a chocolate chip cookie stick figure, and I baked it. And, so it's just making fun,
good for
fun.
you.
And then when we'd make the cupcakes, I learned that it was try to get as much ready ahead of time as I could. So like if I could crack the eggs into the bowl, then kind of eliminated a lot of shell being in the bowl. But I'd have wooden spoons for all of them. They'd have their the spoons up in the air, poised, ready for me to count to 3, and then go, listo, ready. And then they'd all start, and there'd be cookie dough going all over. But they loved baking the cupcakes. And then when they were cooled, I let them frost them and put the sprinkles on. And so that was a tradition. The minute I would get there, every time it was like, galletas and pastelitos. I'm like, sí, siempre, always,
So,
you know.
so not only did they feel good in the moment, but they also felt good knowing you were coming the next year. Oh, well, we're
Right.
going to bake cookies, so they could also look
Always.
forward to it as well, and then
Yes.
have the fond memories to look back on too.
Yeah.
But and I would you mind telling people about how for one of your trips you actually wrote a letter to General Mills
Oh,
and got
y-
batter?
yes. I wrote a letter. I got the name. A friend of mine's husband worked at General Mills, so I got the name of the person to write the letter to, and just said that I would make chocolate chip cookies, Betty Crocker, with kids in orphanage, and would General Mills be willing to donate a few packages? And they did. They donated like a small case. So then I brought a thank you card to the orphanage then, and took pictures of the kids holding up the packages of Betty Crocker chocolate chip cookie mix. And then they all wrote on the thank you card. And then when I got back to Minnesota, I developed the pictures back in the day when people did that
Yes.
and put that in the thank you card and sent it to the gentleman who had generously done that. So I think people are so willing to help and to be involved. They just need to know what the needs are. And
Oh yeah.
yeah,
And you personified the efforts by having that picture then and having the kids sign the card. That's
yes,
a big deal.
yeah. Hmm.
But so are there any additional stories or things that come to mind as we kind of close things out, whether it's from traveling to Africa, or it could be a country in the Caribbean, or perhaps Europe for that matter? Any place you've been on one of your mission trips that you want to call out for people?
You know, it's hard to just find one to say this was like the best one or whatever. They've all had something about them that was very meaningful. I just have always felt that I was very blessed to be able to go on these trips. I've met some amazing people. I mean, people with emotional grit, because every day is a challenge to them. I think one of the things that is one of the high points of my year, and has been for about the last 5 years, is going to Reynosa and teaming up with my friends Barry and Anne Marie Straight and their kids. And part of what we do out in a little country church, about 27 miles into Reynosa, or how far. And we have a women's tea every year at Christmas for the ladies. And these ladies don't have it easy. Life is very hard for them. Yet once a year they come together in a little church, and we have the tables decorated. We have lots of gifts. We have food, and it's so fun for me to watch them having fun themselves, laughing and forgetting about their cares, and just enjoying being women and enjoying being with one another, and then sending them off with a hug and an armload full of gifts and cookies. It's just very, very rewarding, and I'm grateful for the privilege to do it.
Could see that.
Yeah.
So I do want to close out today's episode with a quote on your behalf. And I have my cheat sheet here, so I can look to see how to have the quote. But it's by Maya Angelou, and she said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel."
Mhm.
So whether it's been on the home front, well, since forever. I mean, I was born, obviously a long time ago, so back in the 70s. So my entire life, I've appreciated things you've done like this, but also people around the world have benefited as well. So thank you so much for not only liking this quote, but for also living it. So,
Oh, thank
so,
you.
so thank you for being on the podcast today, and for the listeners, thank you for joining us. I'll look forward to having you join me next time as well. And as I mentioned earlier, please feel free to like and subscribe on my YouTube channel, Emotional Grit, for additional episodes. Thanks, everyone.